What's up, man?
What's going on? Fred from the Fred Show on Kiss FM in Chicago. You're on Hoppe Hour. What's going on, bro?
Oh, you just straight up, like, I didn't even get like a, hey, we're about to be on the air. We're just going.
That's the new way I do it, bro. I don't even have a script. I don't even have a script in front of me. Remember when I used to be so like much of a formula and I would like ask you things that weren't even like a follow up to what you just said?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what you were doing before, but like I would have enunciated from the beginning if I had known that it was being recorded. But now I know, so
bro.
We're good.
It's casual. I kind of like it. It's like a laid back vibe. Like I had kid Chris on 2 days ago, and he was kind of like not thrown off by it, but he's like, "Wow, this is a lot different." Like everyone's been saying that, you know.
Yeah, Kid Chris is awesome. You get all the good guests, man. I'm telling you.
I know, man. I'm running out of guests. Literally, I've probably had anybody that's worth being on the show. Like, obviously, someone I'd want to get, but there's really no way to get into contact with him would be Elliot Siegel from DC. But there's really not an email. That's like the only like name I can think of because I've literally had everybody on. I mean, I sent what's his name a DM Charlemagne this afternoon because he followed me like 5 years ago.
He'll probably do it. He'll probably do it.
Yeah, I just got to figure out a way to get his attention because I can imagine he gets a lot of DMs. You know, no big deal. Breakfast Club.
No, I think he'll do it. He did Paulina, one of our producers. He did her podcast, and I think she did the same thing. Just wrote him directly. So, good luck.
So I read the radio trades, and Robert Feeder's one of the big ones for people that don't know. He's out of Chicago, and I saw that you have a new co-host. How's that going?
Yeah, it's exciting. We got her out of St. Louis, and her name is Christy, and she's very talented, very raw. She's 28 years old. She's done full-time radio for 8 years. Did full-time radio in college. So she's, you know, for being 28, she has a lot of experience and a ton of ideas. Very hardworking, very creative. So we're excited. I mean, in a time where unfortunately jobs are going away, the company invested in us and gave us a chance to bring in a new person. So I'm super grateful for that.
How many candidates were you looking at for the position?
We probably interviewed 15 people. I think.
Wow.
I heard there were 600 applications or something. I mean, I know it's a tough time right now, but tons of folks in the market, people with jobs, people without jobs. It was great. And I'm really honored that, I mean, granted, it's a huge opportunity in a big market on a great station, but, you know, I had a lot of great conversations, so many talented people out there, and I'm grateful that people would want to be a part of the team, frankly.
Is it weird for you? You've been in Chicago for 10 years, right?
11.
Is it weird to think that like maybe 11 years ago, I'm not saying you wouldn't have had as many applications, but like you're a very humble guy. You're very laid back, but you've become a name in Chicago. Is that crazy to think about?
You know, it's crazy to think, and I say 11 years instead of 10 because I'm proud of every single year. I mean, I truly didn't know if I would be accepted, and that was all that I heard when I first came to town was that I wasn't from Chicago, I wouldn't work, but I wanted it to work so badly. It was, you know, it truly was my dream job. It was truly the best opportunity, and the guy before me had some success, but at the end, it wasn't going well. And I don't know why. I've never met him. I have nothing bad to say about him, but it's so rare that you get to come into a market this size and not replace a legend at the top of the game. You know, normally guys, they ride this out, and, you know, the Elvises and the Seacrests and the Maddies, they ride this out forever, and then they retire, and then the next guy's just not the same. In this case, I kind of got to start from scratch completely, and it was a blessing, you know. And again, I took nothing for granted. I had no idea how long it would last. I thought, you know, the worst thing that could happen is I get to Chicago and I fail, and I go back to some other market that I've been to, but I tried. And so 11 years, and I'm just so grateful that it worked, because as you know, this is such a loyal media town, and you know, I I'm so fortunate to have some of that loyalty on my side.
Well, the one thing you had going for you, because I was 17, 16 when you came to town, and I would listen to you when I was driving to class. And the one thing you had going for you was it was the like end of Eddie and Jobo. There was really nothing going on in Chicago radio. I think Brandmeier just got off. So literally there was really nothing to listen to in the morning. And you were just kind of like the fresh young guy that came to town. And I remember reading all the like message boards online saying you wouldn't have a chance. But I kind of knew you would do well just because like it was like a year after Eddie and Jobo were left or were let go by B96. So like there was really nothing on at that time.
Yeah. I mean, Eric Ferguson, you know, on the mix has been here for a long time, and he's been very successful, and I respect that success. And, you know, I want that for us too. And we do a different show. We do a very different show. And so, you know, we win where we're supposed to win, and he wins where he's supposed to win. And you know, we're kind of right on him. So I hope that continues. And like I said, it's just not bullshit. I just feel so fortunate that it's worked out this long, and I hope it goes another 10 years.
You know what I find weird though about like, I don't want to just call out Robert Feeder, but what I find fascinating about his articles is like he'll post the ratings that he has access to, but he doesn't post like the ratings that are important. So like it said you were in 15th place with this amount of listeners. And I was like, but that's like the 6+ ratings, right? Like I love when he does that, and other journalists do that. I'm like, but you don't have, for people that are listening, there's different demographics, 18-34 female, 25-54 female men and whatnot. And like, what's the demographic he posts? Cause I'm like, that's not really accurate. You're not in 15th place.
Yeah. No, that's by the way, that drove me absolutely crazy, and God bless Robert Feeder. But I read that. I'm like, you know, anyone who reads that, who doesn't say what you just said, I'm like, thinks that we're total hacks. But he's allowed to post 6+ as a non-subscriber publicly, which is all that anyone is allowed to post. And of course, as you know, 6+ whatever, no one's buying on that.
What is 6+? I don't even know what 6+ is.
I can't even fully I guess it's just the entire panel. I can't even articulate how it's weighed, or, you know, our wheelhouse is really 1849, 25, 54. 1834 is important to us too. You know, we target women. We'll take persons. Unfortunately, we're very competitive. 1 or 2 in all of that, thankfully. But yeah, I saw that and I'm like, you know, that is not, I don't even know who's in 15th place. Really. I don't know. That
probably AM radio, probably AM radio. 15th.
I don't know, man. I can't tell you 15 morning shows in Chicago. So I don't know how we could be the 15th, but anyway, fortunately that's not what that's not what matters to the company. So I guess I'll deal with a Robert Feeder article, but yeah, I read that and thought, oh my God.
I saw that and I thought of you because I think we've talked about that prior, about like ratings and how they only post that. And I saw that and I immediately thought of one of our phone conversations about that, because I was like, it doesn't really seem accurate. Because at times it'll like show that you're like in 7th place, and then at times you're not on the map. But then I look at your social media and like a post has 400 comments. So I'm like, it's obvious you're doing something correct.
Yeah, I think that you have to pay for the other numbers, and they can't, you know, if he could post all those demographics publicly, then I assume that you wouldn't have to buy them. The companies, iHeart and whomever wouldn't have to buy them. So I guess that's the deal, a licensing deal. I don't know. It doesn't matter. I appreciate the press, good or bad. And, that's not the story, but hey, whatever.
So going back to what you were talking about, you're talking about like all the names that are in one market forever, like Elvis Duran and Matty. I find Matty Siegel fascinating because I don't think he gets enough credit for what he's done in radio. Like I was talking to a few people at work, like, oh, did you hear he's been at Kiss 108 for 40 years? And it's like a few of my coworkers had no idea who he was. And I was like, it's crazy to me because like, that's like an innovator right there.
I mean, I just turned 40, which means he's been on the radio in Boston on Kiss 108 the entire time I've been alive. It's amazing. And the fact that if you go to Boston, 3 generations, almost maybe 4 generations have listened to Maddie in the morning. And I think at one point he did some sort of kids television show. I mean, everybody knows who that guy is. It's just, he's Maddie in the morning. It is what it is. And I don't get to listen very often. I know some of his team, a girl named Bax is on his team. She's amazing, but I don't even know what he's talking about anymore. And I don't even know if it matters because he's an institution. And I think it's amazing. And he should be commended. And no, you're right. I don't think people talk enough about him.
Because he actually didn't make
quite heard of.
I listen to him occasionally. I go through a lot of different shows throughout the month. Like I'll listen to you, listen to Woody. I'll just listen to like various shows for like maybe 40 minutes. And I was listening to him I think when he didn't make the Radio Hall of Fame, and I just thought that was utterly ridiculous that Matty Siegel did not make the Radio Hall of Fame. That just blew my mind.
Is he's still not in there?
No, it was his first year, I believe, making the Radio Hall of Fame, and then he didn't make it. But all these all these current shows that have been around for like 10 years or whatever, like made it. And I was like, how do you not let in a guy who like changed top 40 radio? I don't know. I just thought that was bizarre.
40 years in any market, I think you should be considered strongly for the Radio Hall of Fame. And the one thing I think is interesting about that, and it's in Chicago, and I think it's cool that there is one, but how can somebody who's actively on the radio, you're right, for a lot less time, how can you be in the Hall of Fame if you're active, and yet the guy who's been doing it for 40 years doesn't make sense? There should be some different rules, I think, because you can't get in the NFL Hall of Fame, or you can't get in the NBA Hall of Fame unless you've been out for so many years. So I don't know why. I don't know how that works.
It's very weird. It's like when have you been to the Radio Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I have.
It's very bizarre because like there's like typos on some of the plaques. It's just like it's interesting. I had fun going there. I mean, it was cool, like just kind of reading it, but it was not what I was expecting it to be.
I forget who I went for. Maybe it was Elvis's induction. If he's in there, I don't know who. I went for somebody's a few years ago, and it was cool. It was cool to see. I can't remember who else was being inducted that year, but big names and people who were super appreciative to be a part of it, and it's cool. It's cool that they have one.
Is it crazy to you to think about how many listeners you have? Is it wild to think about?
I guess I don't think of it that way. I guess I think of it. I don't know. It's been a long time since, and it's been a long time since I've gone to work and thought about how many people are listening. I think that was something that I did early on, and it made me really nervous. And now I almost don't. It's not that I don't think about the audience, because I only think about the audience, but maybe once the content's chosen and once we're sort of in the act, I feel like I'm just talking to my friends on the show. I don't necessarily think about the quantity of people in their cars or whatever, because I would probably overthink everything if I did that.
I don't realize how big Chicago is until I leave it. It's really weird. Like when I went to Cleveland or now in Tampa, and whenever I come back, it's crazy. Like you can pick up Kiss in Gary, Indiana. Like it's just, you don't realize how massive of a city and how massive of an area Chicagoland is until you're in it. And you're like, oh my God.
Well, it's true. And the truth is I live in the Loop. I live in the city. I live not far from the radio station. And, this is not our bread and butter. Sure, we have listeners in the Loop, but as you know, being from Chicago, our bread and butter is the vast suburbs. I mean, Northwest, and unfortunately, I have friends. I am a pilot, and I fly out of a certain area, and I do different things, so I get to experience those different areas. But you're right. I mean, you can drive and drive and drive and drive, and you're still in Chicago proper. It's something that if I didn't leave the city, I wouldn't necessarily fully understand. That this little area here, the buildings and stuff, that's what you see on TV when the Bears play at Soldier Field, but that's only a very small part of what's going on here. It's massive.
Speaking of the Bears, I'm going to talk about it today when I do my talk show portion of the show. I'm done. I haven't really watched the Bears in maybe 2 years, I'm out, bro. No, never again. I've watched them for half of my life. I began in 2005, and I was very, what's the word? I was very lucky. That was the year they went to the Super Bowl. I was very privileged. There was opportunity. It was crazy. The first year you watch your team, they go to the Super Bowl. Bro, I can't do it anymore. The Bears don't care about the fans. The owners don't want to do anything new. They brought back the team that's been nothing better than 8-8, man. How are you dealing with it? Because I know you're not from Chicago, but I know being there 11 years, it's turned you into a fan. But for me, man, being somebody that lived there for 21 years and somebody that digs the city and reads all the trades, and I feel like I'm a part of Chicago, even though I'm not there, I'm done. I'm out.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. After this amount of time, I've adopted the team, and I'm used to bad teams. I mean, I grew up in Arizona, and the Cardinals were awful. I mean, every home game for the Cardinals was an away game because there were more fans for the other team. I mean, I get that. This place is a much better place to live when the Bears are good and competing, and so I want them to win. And I agree with you. It seems very apathetic. You know, it's difficult, and the fact they announced today they're keeping the GM, they're keeping the head coach, and then Chuck Pagano, I feel like he was the scapegoat. You know, he retired as to basically not get fired. It's outrageous. You know, it seems crazy to me that year after year it's pretty mediocre.
And the thing too that's infuriating is like people can make fun of the Cleveland Browns all they want, or like the New York Jets or the Jacksonville Jaguars, those franchises, or the Lions, where they're never good. But at least with those franchises, bro, they try something every 2 years. It never works, but you kind of have to give them a pat on the back like, hey, it's never going to work in your lifetime, but at least you're trying to get new GMs and new players, and you are an awful team, so you get good draft picks. But what's really infuriating about the Bears, and is just why I'm done, is the fact that they're not doing anything new, and they probably made money from going to the playoffs and being 8-8 and just, you know, merchandise and that. They're content with where they're at, and it's like, why am I going to spend 3 hours watching Mitch have a hard time throwing a first down? Like, what do I get out of it as a fan? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I shouldn't say always. It's been a number of years, but I want to say my first year here, they were competitive, and it went downhill from there. And that was with Jay Cutler. But it just seems mediocrity is mediocrity. It's fine for them. And I know it's not good for the fans, but you're right. And to your point, the Browns are competitive this year. They're still in the game, and you're right. They just switch it up until they get something right, and that's not happening here.
And it's weird. It just seems like from the outside looking in, you don't realize how contagious it is being a Chicago sports fan until you leave the area. Because like the Cubs win the World Series, and then 3 years later they get rid of the manager that wins the first World Series in 100 years, and the Bulls haven't been good since Derrick Rose, and prior to that, they weren't good since Michael Jordan. The Blackhawks were good, but then they get rid of their coach, and then the Sox or whatever, and it's just like, it's really weird. Like, I feel like when you're in the city, bro, and you're watching the local news, or you're listening to sports radio, or reading a newspaper, or listening to your favorite podcast, you have this false sense of hope where you think the team is gonna do well. Like, this is gonna be our year, but like when you move out of Chicago and you see it from afar, you realize, bro, that it's nothing more than just a money grab because they know that people are going to go. It's really sad.
Yeah. The Cubs, I'm a Cubs fan. I grew up a Cubs fan, spring training in Arizona, WGN, watching the games when we didn't have baseball growing up. And then we have a family tie, but that I think everybody was hoping and wanted to see that be more of a dynasty. And granted, I think the expectation was that because they won one, and it had been so long, that they would keep winning. But that was a tough one to watch. The Sox, I guess, are getting good again. But you're right; it's a moving target, sports in Chicago.
How sad were you about your Cardinals not making the playoffs with Murray getting hurt?
Yeah, I guess I'm just not surprised. That's another team that just seems to be just good enough, but they can't get over the hump. And I'm glad that they're competitive. Growing up, they weren't competitive, and I think Murray's a stud, but they never seem to quite get it all the way. And that's frustrating. Same with the Bears. And maybe the Cardinals have evolved a little more than the Bears, but it's just it just almost getting there is not good enough. You got to be competitive at some point. And I know these things are secular, and they don't. You don't always win. You don't win 20 years in a row. These things are moving. It's moving. It's evolving, but you got to win at some point. Otherwise, people get like you are now with the Bears, and they're just. And I've seen a lot of that. I've seen a lot of people on social media saying, whether they mean it or not, like, I just can't support this team anymore.
I think you might really begin to see. I don't think it'll ever be like a complete boycott, but I definitely think in the next 2 to 3 years, if they keep doing what they're doing, because, like, for example, I thought this was so funny, Fred. Mitchell's quoted as saying, "I love it here and I want to play here." Of course, bro, you're playing for the Bears and you're in the best city in the Midwest and one of the best cities in North America. Like, I would want to play for the Bears too. I thought that was so disrespectful, in my opinion, for him to say it feels like home here. Of course it does. Chicago's amazing. Come on, win.
Yeah. Well, the irony in all this, or whatever you want to call it, is that Jay Cutler was probably the most talented quarterback. And I might even, and I'm not much of a historian, but it's certainly in recent time, and everybody hated him. And I understand why. He always had the scowl on his face and apparently wasn't a very good teammate, but everyone drove his ass out of town, and yet he may have been the guy. Maybe we'd all like to have him now.
The weird thing with Jay, I think I figured out Jay's problem. I don't think he wanted to play football. I kind of get the vibe that Jake Cutler was kind of forced into playing because people knew he was talented. I think he had all the tools to win. I just don't think he wanted to play. I don't think he wants to do anything. Yeah. If you look at that Cavallari show, he looked annoyed with his ex-wife. He just looks like everything annoys him. It's very weird.
Yeah, well, I thought he was going to have a TV career and not the kind that he wound up having. And he was one of the best parts, if not the best part of that Cavallari show.
He was hysterical
on that thing.
Bro, I didn't watch much of it, but I watched the clips that were on YouTube. His mannerisms, like when she would be talking to him and like he would like not be listening, but he was pretending he was listening. It was just, or there was a clip of them driving in a car or something. He was like fascinating to watch because I'm not a big fan of him, but I was really sad when they divorced because those clips that were on YouTube, man, I would watch that over and over. It's so cringe to watch.
He was the reason I would, and I can't say I watched very many, but when I did, I would laugh at him. So good for him.
How many shows do you have to watch that you don't want to watch for your job?
Right now, just a few. The Bachelor probably being and that's a love-hate thing for me, man. The Bachelor is, everyone's talking about it every week, and we spend a fair amount of time on it. And I hate watching it, and I hate myself for spending 2 hours on that at least every week. But I really can't turn away. So I'm not sure. It's love-hate.
Yeah, I don't know. I've tried to get into it. I don't hate it because everybody's kind of into something like in its prime. And when it came back a few years ago, I was into Jersey Shore. And I do follow celebrity news. So like I was aware of how crazy Hannah Brown was in that. So I'm not a hater of it. I just think maybe if it was on MTV and it could get a little more raunchy, I feel like that'd be more fun. Nothing sexual. I just think if it could get a little crazier, but to me, if it's a part of the company that's a part of Disney, it's just a little too bland for me, but I do respect it. I mean, it gets viewers.
Yeah, I'm lucky our shows. Everybody has sort of different interests. We got Kardashian folks, we got housewives folks, and people who like to watch, sports, and people who like to watch movies and all different stuff. So, we got it all covered by somebody, so I don't have to watch it all. But yeah, I would say over the years, I've probably spent a lot of time watching crap I don't have any interest in. But if it's pop culture, then I need to know something about it, or somebody does on the show.
what was your approach to covering Jersey Shore in its prime? Like, I remember the next morning, I think it was your predecessor. I don't think it was you. I don't think you were on in Chicago the next day after Snooki got punched. I think it was your predecessor that was talking about it, and they talked about it for 2 hours. I remember I was waiting at the bus. It was like -10 out. And I remember that day, bro. Like, I don't think TV is as impactful as it was 11 years ago because there's so many more options. Do you remember that in that Monday morning after Snooki got punched? Everybody was talking about it.
I remember it. Yeah. I wasn't here then. I do remember it. We were talking about it. I would have been in Charlotte. I don't think that, they've made comebacks with that show in different forms since I've been in Chicago, but it hasn't been nearly as relevant as it was then. And so that wasn't exactly my time here.
It's weird. It's like that show gets a good amount of viewers, but it's just kind of doing the same thing. It's like a well-oiled machine, and I respect it. But I think the biggest problem with Jersey Shore is Ronnie, because he's got that drama with the mother of his kid, and then like they're beating each other up. And then when there's a real life kid involved, that was kind of when I tuned out. It was when MTV kind of began exploiting like two people that probably shouldn't have had a kid. To me, that was kind of when I felt a little skeezed out by Jersey Shore, and I just kind of tuned out.
A lot of these shows are the same for me as TikTok. I didn't want to be on TikTok. I hate myself for being on TikTok, quite frankly, but there's enough stuff that's going on there, enough references on our show and with the audience from TikTok that I feel like by not being on it and by not watching some of these shows I'm not cool at all. Like, I'm not a cool guy. Everybody knows that. Like, I know that. I say that, but I still want to know what the hell people are talking about. And it's part of the gig. So it's no different. It's, you got to do this stuff to at least understand the references.
I think though, what works in your favor is that you're cool because you don't try to be cool. Because like we all know, like the people that'll be at the morning show boot camp that like act like they're the best in the room, and they're like, let's say in a town like, I don't know, Omaha, and then you got like Fred from Kiss FM in Chicago or Mojo, and like you guys are the ones that are humble. I've always found that fascinating, is whenever you meet radio people, it's the ones that are in the smaller markets that are the big hot shots.
That's interesting, and I don't know that I've always found that. There's probably some examples of that. Sure, I'm just a very lucky dude. I worked hard. I did work hard, and I did the work, but that doesn't mean that everybody gets the break. And even if you get the break, it doesn't mean that it's going to work and that it's going to last. And so, to me, I'm incredibly fortunate. I've been a lot lucky too, and I just, like I said, I don't take any of it for granted. This year for a lot of people has caused, people to reprioritize and really think about what they have, what they don't have, and what's important. And it's a dream come true, and that's a cheesy thing to say, but at this point, like I said, I'm just lucky I'm really lucky that it happened.
How lucky do you feel to be employed just with everything that happened within the company over the last, I would say, 12 months?
No, I'm incredibly lucky to be employed, and we've done well. We have a good track record, and we have a long tenure now, and we have great advertising partner relationships, and I think right now shows like ours, during the pandemic, were really able to shine, and I think they became more valuable to the industry than less valuable, or than a financial burden, because while a lot of other industries were consolidating and people were scurrying to work remotely and do all these different things, we were still on the air every day. We were still providing information, providing companionship. We were still, sharing our perspectives on stuff. And, I don't think that we're right about everything, and I don't think that we are the be all and end all, but I know that for a lot of people who make us part of their days, they were comforted by knowing that we were still there and we were still at it. And I think that's the reason so many of our advertising partners stuck with us. And I think it's the reason that, personality shows that are developing content, that are creating relationships with the audience. It's the reason why, in whatever medium it becomes, this business, I think it will always be there. We'll always be doing that because, whether it's the radio, whether it's the phone, whether it's some technology that we haven't even learned about yet, people are still they're thriving for that companionship. And I was, we were fortunate to be a brand that was doing that had the following, and so we could ride it out. So for all of that, I feel really fortunate because so many really talented people, even people who had many of the same attributes that we have with big audiences in different cities and tenure, they let those guys go. And so it wasn't automatic. But I'm glad that we made it through, and I hope that we come out of it even stronger.
Yeah, I noticed the radio shows that are popular within their respected market, I noticed that's when they really shined during COVID. So like working at the Bone, I noticed producing the shows on the weekend and helping out Mike Kelta when the show got COVID. I noticed like radio was bigger than ever was during this past year. I feel like before people may have been overlooking it, but I feel like during COVID, that's when radio kind of became relevant again.
Yeah, I think that to your point, a lot of shows became more valuable to their respective companies during this time. But I was surprised to see a lot of, there were shows that were very successful, heritage shows, talk shows that were let go because, for expense reasons or consolidation or syndication or whatever. And so again, it wasn't automatic. Just because you had good ratings and a large audience, I don't think that necessarily bought you a job. But in a lot of cases, I think we hopefully established why we're valuable to the companies and to the advertising partners, and hopefully we never have to experience something like this again. But at the same time, I think that the industry has developed so many efficiencies that unfortunately it just because the world goes back to whatever normal looks like and people get in their cars again and people go back to work or whatever, I think unfortunately it doesn't mean all those jobs come back because frankly the industry has figured out how to do without.
What would be your advice though for up and comers that want to go on the radio with the jobs maybe being fleeting?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely am fortunate to be on the content creation side, and that's not to say that there's not value and talent in being a music personality. There is, and if you can be one of those music personalities that they put in a bunch of markets, good for you. But whether it's on the air or podcasting or on social media, TikTok, whatever, I mean, you got to be on the content creation side. I don't think it's as viable for the music to be your primary content. I think that's a wider market that can be served by a number of different platforms, devices and places. And I feel like, you want to be in a position, and it's hard to be given this opportunity, but you want to be in a position to develop a connection with your audience, and you want to do it by creating content, by sharing yourself, your story. And again, I'm saying things right now that I know radio people are screaming, I want to do that, and I'm not able to do it. But I think, if you can find yourself in a position like that, those are the brands, and I think the platforms that maintain, and hopefully stand the test of time.
What is your plan for your show in 2021? Have you thought about that?
Of course. We added a new member, and so obviously, working her into the family and into the audience in a way that doesn't disturb the current brand, but only enhances it, that's a top priority. I mean, she's so talented and brings so much, but we have a good show. We have a successful show. And so we need to, it's a fine balance of, people getting their coffee every morning. They get coffee from Dunkin' Donuts. They've been getting it for 11 years. It tasted the same. I want the coffee to taste better. I don't want the coffee to taste different. And so that's something that we're focused on. And we're focused on growing. We hopefully, the ratings we've managed to do well, but the ratings are tumultuous. People aren't in their cars. People aren't listening the way that they did a year ago. We're hoping to see more of that. and I think we're just focused on, continuing to build on the brand and develop the relationship and hopefully provide people with a few laughs and some information and some companionship. And it's not rocket science, dude. I know you know that. It's not rocket science. We just have to, try and be better at it than everybody else.
So, for people that have not heard your show, or for people that would want to hear your show, how can they find the Fred Show?
Yeah, in Chicago on 103.5 Kiss FM, on the iHeartRadio app, of course, Kiss FM Chicago, and then everything we do is up on iHeartRadio. If you search for the Fred Show on there, we have an off-air podcast. We've got all of our features are up there, the whole show every day, and the Fred Show Radio. It's Fred Show Radio, not the FredShowRadio.com, another place.
Well, dude, thank you for coming on the show. It's been a lot of fun. It's been very cool over the last 11 years knowing you, probably for 8 of it, and just seeing you grow. Like, when I first heard you, I could tell you were a little nervous, but it's just crazy to see the brand that you have built in Chicago since 2010.
Well, and I got to tell you, for what it's worth, and I am certainly not the master at the craft, but, I can say the same about you. And, the kid that I met interning at Morning Show Boot Camp, and the kind of radio podcaster that you were doing then, I think you were trying to be just shocking, or I don't know. You hadn't come into your own, and it's amazing now. Even the 3 or 4 times I've been on your podcast, I mean, the more natural and the more confident that you've become in what you're doing, and so it's cool to see that. And I think you're doing great. And I hope you continue to succeed with this podcast and On the Bone and all that different stuff. So congratulations to you as well.
Thank you, bro. Well, it's not that I'm not a shock jock anymore, because I do rant on my podcast, but what I do now is I try to, so I think this is the best way to explain it. When I first met you, Opie and Anthony were on air. So I think I was listening to Anthony Cumia every morning, so I had rage. But now I listen to like Howard, or I'll listen to you, or I'll listen to The Bone here in Tampa. So I've figured out a way when I'm ranting on my show, for people that are listening that are a fan of you, I do Hoppe Radio, Hoppe Hour on every podcasting app. I try to be more kind-hearted while ranting. So before I would have been like, oh, the Kardashians are talentless and all they're known for is a sex tape. But now I try to because I don't talk about anything with Trump on my podcast, nothing political. And I try to find a way to talk smack while being passive aggressive. Because I feel like Kid Chris said it to me best. He said, you can't say it exactly on air. He goes, you can either throw the whole bucket of paint on the wall, or you can draw it and make people think that you're saying it. And that's kind of what I've been doing ever since he said that to me about a year and a half ago, is I'm insulting people and I'm being shocking, but I'm not saying it, if that makes sense.
Well, I think you've come into your own, and I think you're growing, and you can hear it, and that's what's important. And I think, I don't know. I don't like the term shock. I don't know if it's relevant. I think you're just communicating in your own way, using the influences that you have, as opposed to maybe mimicking the influences that you have. Because we all did that. I mean, the guy who got me my first job in radio, I wanted everything to sound just like him, and I was nowhere as good as him. And I the first 3-4 years of my career, I mimicked everything he did, and it took a long time before I realized some version of that and some version of me is probably a better combination than imitating somebody else. And I think that's what is happening to you. I think you're figuring that out in a really good way. So keep it up.
Thank you, bro. This is going to be our year. I feel like 2021 is like the rebound year, because I did well in 2020 and you did well in 2020, but I just think this year is when everything's going to flourish.
I think so too, man. I wish you the best.
Awesome. Thank you, bro.
Hey, thanks, dude. I appreciate it as always.